the Penguin. Yes, you should be watching this show. This show completely surprised me, and I'm sure everyone has seen all the headlines and all the buzz about this show, and it truly is not exaggerating. Personally, even though I am a big comic book fan and a huge Batman fan, I'm not a huge fan of spin-off shows. I feel like probably because of Disney Plus, they've ruined that concept for everyone, you know? And Netflix did that pretty good, you know? But I just feel like at this point in time, it's been like a solid like 10 years or maybe a little bit more of spin-off shows of superhero properties. And I just feel like at this point, I'm personally kind of over it. So even though I loved Batman and I respect and trust Matt Reeves' vision, a part of me still felt like, oh no, like not you too, Matt. Like you're gonna do a spinoff as well, you know? And though again, Colin Farrell's Penguin was amazing in the film, I still was reluctant about this show. I was for sure gonna watch it, but I've seen like half of the Gotham show. And I just was like, it's probably gonna be very much like Gotham, blah 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 blah. So I was very much on the fence, but I just had to keep rooting myself in trust for Matt Reeves and for that whole team. I was ready to be surprised, and I was hoping to be surprised, and thank God I was. And this show exceeded my expectations. Right off the bat, I feel like the thing worth mentioning about this show is that I think I haven't seen all superhero shows. I haven't seen all the comic book iterations and all that. But not talking about gangster shows, strictly talking about superhero comic book properties, I feel like this is the best villain tale that's ever been told. Because even a movie like Joker, all properties, Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, you name it, like all the other stories that are about villains, they bring on a bigger foe for this villain to counteract, and then we get to see a different side of them, and we sympathize with them and we understand them, and then often they're just misunderstood or dealt a bad hand in life. And the show was us learning about them, understanding them, and empathizing and sympathizing with them. And then ultimately, they always seem somehow heroic, especially Loki. Though I love Loki, and I think mostly people would agree that Loki is kind of like the standard for a villain or just in general superhero show. He pretty much is like a hero now, like no doubt about it at this point, you know. Like they completely shifted that character over, which is that's a pretty cool story, and it's okay because they did it right. But everyone has been doing this lately, and what this show does is that it makes you sympathize with Oswald. It makes you like him because of the writing, and a huge part of it is Colin Farrell's performance. So he's so likable, he's so intriguing, engaging, but the show is constantly reminding you, which I love. It's constantly reminding you that this is not a good guy. And I think everyone, if not most people in the audience, have the moment every episode you're like, oh man, this guy's a villain. This guy's not a good guy. This guy's a snake. He's a liar. He's a cold-blooded killer. He's selfish. And there's just constant moments where you feel like, damn, he has a heart. He feels for these people, and he has a code. And sometimes I would often think like, that doesn't kind of coincide with the established reputation that Oz has, which is being like a liar and a backstabber. And then he'll do something that reminds you, like, no, man, he is that guy. Like, he's just so good at lying, so good at manipulating, and so good at just trying to survive and only caring about number one. And I think that's brilliant because this is a villain. This is a super villain. This is a very important villain to Batman. So yeah, he should not be a super sympathizable gangster that we all kind of are rooting for secretly because of the show. Like, no, he's a villain. We should understand him, respect him, but always remain a villain. And I feel like this show's writing, and largely this is because of Matt Reeves, but also the showrunner Lauren LaFranc. She's the one who executed it, and she showed the respect for the source material and treating these characters as they should be treated. And especially in the end, I'm gonna keep this review reaction spoiler free, but hopefully if you've never seen the show, hopefully you haven't already been spoiled. But there's a moment in the end, in the last episode, that just solidifies this is a villain, and I love that. I thought it was very effective, shocking, and earned, It made sense with the character. It didn't feel stupid. It didn't feel like a check mark. It didn't feel like shock factor. Like, let me just do this crazy thing so that the audience is like, he's a villain. Like, no, it was totally in line. And that's what made it so impactful. And the show just takes it a step further, and then it's not just certain acts he does, it's also just learning more about him as the show progresses to make you understand just how disturbed this guy really is. He's not just a liar, because a lying gangster, I mean, just because they're lying and they kill people, it doesn't make an audience immediately cut someone out. I mean, there's plenty of gangster movies and shows where we stand behind these characters because they're still attractive, And I think the show is smart to take it a step further and make you understand backstory and just certain things that we didn't know about Oz. And just understand this is a really messed up guy. This is a villain tale, so it should be that way. So that's truly where the show shines for me. That's what makes the show worthwhile. That's what makes this show a hit. And then there's a ton of other stuff. Like I love that there's a cohesive aesthetic for Gotham. And the show doesn't, obviously it doesn't have like the artistry of the Batman, but it has a very distinct look. And I think the show does a pretty good job of still keeping that look, still keeping that integrity of the established Gotham in the outfits and all that, and especially in Sofia Falcone. She's great. I mean, I think everyone knows she's great. This is her like really big dramatic role, and she totally knocked it out of the park. She was so engaging. She never felt like annoying, or she didn't feel like a strong female character for the sake of having diversity. Like, her character earned its position in this show, and in fact many times I was like, what's she up to? Because she's such an interesting character, and she's such a compelling character and villain as well. And though she's not as messed up as Oswald, she still is a villain, and I think the show also does a great job of keeping it there. She is a villain, though she is kind of on that line of like identity. Like, does she truly want to be a villain? And her own internal struggles and relationship with being a gangster, being a criminal. And I just think she just knocked that role out of the park. The writing for her was tremendous, and I mean, she's freaking attractive. And I think all us geeks and guys that are into more darker the goth scene, totally in love with her. I love her outfits, and I love that again this show kept that gothic aesthetic from the Batman film. And her outfits and her just overall vibe, it's great. It completely stays in line, and it makes her so attractive, so interesting, so badass. You need all those things for a very compelling female character. And I think the show just knocks it out of the park, and that's great. It's a great thing to have, and I'm pretty sure most people love her character. No one feels like this was a forced female character. She had her place, and they wrote her with respect. And speaking of writing with respect, a character I love that they wrote the way they wrote him was Victor. That character could have gone south. I personally hate young characters in stories, but not because I hate the characters, because I don't trust most writers or studios to handle these young people. I don't know why, but they constantly write these characters as like, with just, it's lazy writing. They constantly it seems like they have it in their mind, like, oh, he's just a kid, she's just a kid, like, whatever. Kids make mistakes, kids are dumb, kids are emotional. And like, though that is true, plenty of kids have common sense, a degree of common sense. And I just don't like that in these movies and shows. They always make them just plot devices. They make a mistake so that the hero could fix it or something, and it's just annoying. And Victor could have totally gone that direction. Like, oh, here's a chance to flesh out Oswald, but like, he's constantly gonna be making mistakes and just be annoying and be a liability. And it's gonna make you question the logic of the show. Like, oh, Oz is so smart, but then he has this liability lying around, which happens a lot in these shows. Victor was written with dignity and respect, and I really like his character. The writing was great with him because he works on multiple levels. First of all, he's like a convenient plot device. He's constantly getting Oz out of trouble, and it's whenever Oz is in really tight situations, which he's in there like every episode or every other episode, it's convenient that he could sweep in and save him or bring backup or whatever it may be. So he works on that convenient front. But then Oz has him helping him take care of his mother. So then that aspect of his character is constantly making you learn more about Oz and more about his mother, which if you've seen the show, and if you haven't seen the show, you will see his relationship with his mother is a very important aspect of the show. It's not the main plot, but it's like a slow burn subplot that has a big payoff at the end, which is again great writing. Subplots that actually mean something. So he works on that front as well. And then Victor's backstory expands the events of the Batman. It makes you sympathize with him, and it gives you a different perspective of the street level of Gotham during the events of Riddler's bombings and his terrorist attack. So his character was very intelligently written. I really enjoyed his character, and again, that could have been a train wreck, and they landed that character. And again, the writing is just great in this show. The overall aesthetic is great in this show. The acting, everything all around is great in this show. And I truly think this show is worth your time. I think this show is in the same conversation with Daredevil and Loki. And I think that the show completely fits right up there with those two. And it was such a pleasant surprise, and it just adds to my confidence and trust in Matt Reeves. Because and that's another thing, there was a little bit of Batman service in the show and towards the end, and I very much appreciate that, because as much as I want Batman, as much as I would have gotten a kick from seeing Bruce Wayne or seeing I guess spoiler alert that this doesn't happen, as much as I would have gotten such a kick, and like my fanboy would have been all giddy to see Batman, Robert Pattinson, or to see Gordon, all those things would have been great, but it kind of would have been like obvious and Marvel-y, just like, oh, here's a cameo, or here's that, here's this, And there's two characters that do make an appearance that are from the Batman film, but they're not major characters, but they're noticeable. You recognize them right away. And I feel like their presence has real meaning, and it's okay, like it adds connective tissue without being a real cameo, if that makes sense. And at the very end, there's two little nuggets of fan service, and I think that one of them was pure fan service, but it was earned, so I completely applaud it and embrace it. And the other one had logical reasoning for being there, and it was awesome. And it expands the Batman world even more. This wasn't just an Oswald story. This was an expansion of the world. And he's at a completely different place at the end of this show than he was in the Batman film. So, and I think he's in a good spot now, because as we all saw in the Batman film, he's like a small-time little gangster. He's not even a made man, as they say in the mafia world. And here he is, not necessarily a kingpin, but he certainly has his little empire now. And it totally progressed his character, and I love that. And I can't wait for the Batman Part 2 to see how that goes, to see how all this connects. And yeah, freaking love this show. Highly recommend it. I hope the show gets even more praise. And yeah, let me know your thoughts on the show. And thanks for watching.